Right now, somewhere in your body, there's a trait that exists because one of your ancestors was too afraid to fight. Scientists found the proof, and it rewrites what we thought we knew about survival. Here's the story hidden inside that proof. 30,000 years ago, a hunting party stood at the edge of a forest, spears raised, eyes locked on the prey, moving as one, except for one person, heart pounding, legs frozen, hands shaking. Everyone could see the fear on their face. So what did the tribe do with someone like that? Most people assume they already know the answer. The coward got cast out, left behind to die alone. Because in a world ruled by danger, fear looked like a weakness no group could afford to keep around. Right? Wrong. The truth is almost exactly the opposite. And the proof has been sitting in ancient bones and prehistoric campsites for decades. We tend to think of early human tribes as brutal meritocracies. The strongest hunt, the bravest lead, the weak fall behind. But that image, the fearless caveman, is almost entirely fiction. The real picture, built from tens of thousands of years of archaeology, is far more complicated and far more surprising. Let's start with what actually happened on a hunt. A prehistoric hunting group typically had 8 to 15 people. Some were bold, some were cautious, some were terrified. Researchers who study hunter-gatherer societies, both ancient and modern, consistently find the same thing. Not everyone charged toward danger. And the groups that survived weren't the ones where everyone was fearless. They were the ones where someone stayed back. Think about what that actually means. When the hunters left camp, someone had to stay. Someone had to watch the children. Someone had to guard the fire. Because a fire that went out in the Ice Age wasn't an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. Temperatures dropped to -40 degrees at night. Predators circled camps that went dark. And starting fire from scratch, without matches, without lighters, could take hours, sometimes days. The person who couldn't face the mammoth wasn't worthless. They were the reason the mammoth hunt was worth attempting in the first place. But it goes much deeper than fire. Modern evolutionary biologists have a name for this. They call it risk polymorphism. It means that within any successful group, you need a spread of risk tolerance. Too many risk takers and the group makes fatal mistakes. Too many cautious individuals and the group never acquires what it needs to survive. The sweet spot, the combination that actually kept our ancestors alive, required both the bold and the terrified, the hunter who ran toward danger, and the person who stayed back and watched. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Because the cautious person, the one we might call a coward, had a specific and irreplaceable role in prehistoric society. They were the ones who remembered. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer tribes show that the people least likely to take physical risks are often the most observant. They notice things the bold hunters miss, which plants are safe to eat, which berries appeared before the last storm, where the water source moved during the dry season, which animal tracks mean a predator is close. This knowledge was not written down. It lived in the memories of the people who paid careful attention. And in a world without books, without maps, without any way to store information except the human mind, the person who remembered was the most valuable person in the group, not the strongest hunter, the most careful observer. Let's look at the archaeological record. When researchers examine prehistoric graves, they find something unexpected. Individuals who clearly could not have hunted or fought, people with severe bone diseases, healed injuries, physical disabilities, buried with the same care and ceremony as the strongest members of the group, not cast aside, not abandoned, honored. One of the most remarkable examples is a skeleton found in Italy. Researchers named him Romito II. He lived roughly 10,000 years ago. He could not have survived alone. Yet the evidence shows he lived for years, fed and protected by his group, not tolerated, supported. Another example comes from a site in Vietnam, over 4,000 years ago. Researchers found the remains of a man who had been paralyzed from the waist down, likely from early childhood. He survived to adulthood. In the jungle, in the heat, without modern medicine or wheelchairs, someone fed him every day of his life. Someone carried him. These weren't acts of charity in the modern sense. These were decisions made by groups who understood something we have forgotten. Every person has a function, even the ones who cannot fight. Now, here is the science that explains why. Fear, real, physical fear, is not a character flaw. It is one of the oldest and most successful survival programs ever written by evolution. The human fear response, the racing heart, the frozen legs, the tunnel vision. This system evolved over millions of years, specifically because the individuals who had it survived situations that killed the ones who didn't. Every ancestor who walked into a dangerous situation without hesitation, many of them didn't come back. Every ancestor who paused, who waited, who said not today, those were the ones who lived long enough to have children. Fear didn't make our ancestors weak. In many cases, it made them the survivors. There's research from behavioral ecologists that studied how prehistoric groups made decisions. Groups with a mix of bold and cautious individuals consistently outperformed groups that were uniformly one or the other. The cautious individuals acted as a natural brake system, made them think twice, asked the question no one else was asking. What if this goes wrong? That question, what if this goes wrong, kept entire tribes alive. And the person asking it was the one everyone else called a coward. Let's talk about what happened when a tribe completely lost its cautious members. Researchers who study prehistoric population collapses have identified a pattern. Groups that took consistently high risks, groups where the cautious members were pushed out or ignored, tended to die faster. Not in moments of glory, in moments of miscalculation, a hunt that went wrong, a migration route that failed, a winter that arrived earlier than expected. The bold groups made the memorable moves, the balanced groups made it through the winter. There's something else worth knowing. The concept of coward barely existed in prehistoric tribes, because in a group of 15 people, you couldn't afford to label someone useless. Every person was too important. Even, especially, the ones who couldn't fight. A mother protecting children at camp. An elder remembering where clean water was during the last drought. A young person too frightened to face the predator, but sharp enough to spot it from 200 meters away. All of these were survival roles. All of these kept the group alive through another season. Modern anthropologists who study the few remaining hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Southern Africa, consistently report the same thing. In these groups, the person who stays at camp is not seen as lesser. They are seen as the protector, the guardian of everything the hunters are coming home to. And when researchers compared the cognitive abilities of bold versus cautious individuals in these groups, the cautious ones scored higher on spatial memory, higher on pattern recognition, higher on the ability to predict environmental changes. In other words, the traits that made someone a poor hunter made them an exceptional navigator, healer, and keeper of tribal knowledge. Now here's what this all means. If you have ever felt like a coward, if you have ever stepped back from something that others rushed toward, you were not betraying some ancient human ideal. You were living up to one. The people who survived the Ice Age weren't the ones who never felt fear. They were the ones who felt it and used it. Fear told them which risks were worth taking. Caution kept the fire burning while others hunted. And memory, the memory of the careful, observant person at the edge of the group, that memory was the first library human beings ever had. Ancient humans didn't punish their cowards, they needed them. Every child who survived the winter survived because a cautious adult said no to one more risk. And every piece of knowledge that made it from one generation to the next, every lesson about which plants were poisonous, which rivers flooded in spring, which sounds in the dark meant something was coming, lived first in the mind of someone too careful to throw themselves into the unknown. The boldest members of the tribe made the stories. The cautious ones made sure there was someone left to tell them. And maybe that's the most important thing to understand about fear. It wasn't weakness dressed up as an emotion. It was intelligence dressed up as survival. We are here because of both kinds of people, the ones who charged forward, and the ones who stayed behind, kept the fire burning, and remembered what everyone else was too busy surviving to notice. We are all descended from cowards, and we are alive because of it. The next time you feel fear, the next time your legs won't move and your heart pounds and your instinct says wait, remember this: that feeling kept your ancestors alive. Through ice ages, through predators, through dangers we can barely imagine, that feeling is not your weakness. It is your oldest inheritance, passed down through 300,000 years of survival, from the people who were brave enough to be afraid.